Well, hey, everybody who is listening live or perhaps catching a recording, and welcome to another episode of the Advisory Angle with STRATMOR, powered by the Chrisman Commentary, as usual. So I am Sue Woodard, and you probably know my two esteemed, amazing co-hosts today. We've got the one and only Garth Graham. Sir, how you doing?
Very good. How are you?
Very good. And the one and only Mr. McCracken with a voice made for a podcast. How are you, sir?
Yeah. Face radio, as they say, right? Doing well, Sue. I don't have a single complaint.
Well, we're thankful that we're together today and that you've joined us today. And we've got some really interesting topics we're going to be going through today. We're talking a little bit about the conference season, which we're thick in the midst of fall conference season. We're going to talk a little bit about the conferences we've been to this year, what we are getting ready to go to, and what is kind of the buzz. What are people talking about? What are the hot tips out there? And hopefully we're going to be seeing a lot of you at some of the conferences coming up soon. But Garth, maybe you want to start by just kind of giving a walk through some of the conferences that we've been to this year,
Sure.
some of the things that we're hearing, and then we'll dive into what's coming up next.
Yeah, we're certainly in the season, that's for sure. We in the spring, Stratmore participates in the Mortgage Bankers Association peer group program. So those are two roundtable meetings with lenders of similar size meeting. We just did the large banks last week. We did the large independents next week. So to me, I'm broadly going to talk about conferences in the context of human beings sitting in a room or meeting in a hotel physically in the same location. So in some cases, they're called roundtables. In some cases, they're called workshops. And in some cases, they're called conferences. And the fees differ. But I think that is continues to be a critical part of how we develop relationships and operate in our industry. We certainly, over the next number of years, have done far, far more through Zoom, like these sorts of interactions, Teams and others, but I still think the physical getting together is a key part of that. Now, perhaps I am just showing my own internal bias because I speak at probably 10 to 15 per year. So sometimes, those are conferences, sometimes they're solution provider clients of ours, and I speak at their annual meeting or employee meetings, or whatever. And I just want to mention before I forget that I spoke at a solution provider conference just 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was last week now. I don't know. So I think it was last week. And right before me spoke two people. One was Rob Chrisman, and then right after him was Mike Fratantoni, and then I was the caboose. So we had, folksy Rob and all his history. We had killer economics with Mike Fratantoni. So then I had to get up there and basically had to tell stories. So that's been my most recent conference experience.
Well, some might say, I wouldn't, but some might say they were the warm up. I don't know, for the big Garth show, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I would echo some of your sentiments there. I've been doing a fair amount of speaking at conferences, but we also, in addition to that, have gotten the opportunity to go to a couple of conferences. And I would say, and I'd love Brett to chime in on this point, it does feel like as the year is wearing on and some of the conferences that we've been to, the mood seems to be picking up of late. Brett, what are you hearing out there?
Yeah, no, a couple of years ago, you and I went to a conference and it was depressing. And I knew something was up when we walked in, and I'd never seen this before. And there was just after you checked in, you're walking through the area, there was a human clump of hair just sitting there in the middle of the walkway. And I thought, we're probably in for a couple of days here. And that was 2 years ago, just coming out of COVID. But it's definitely picked up since then. I think the people that are showing up are highly engaged. If they're still in, they're still in the business today. Not everybody, unfortunately, has made it through, post-COVID world. But I've noticed in the meetings that I've attended, people are highly engaged. There are better balance of software companies and solution providers, as well as the economic buyers. And they're the senior level folks who tend to show up. And then I've also noticed a lot for the events that get hosted. Somebody has a happy hour or some sort of an event kind of after the conference. And seeing how people are engaging with each other, very kind of open, what's working for you guys, what's not working for you. It's supposed to be, partners talking to each other. Folks you think are competitors are actually, they become very good friends over the years. And I'm seeing a lot of, just not only just innovation, but hey, how can we help each other? What recommendations do you have? Or here's a problem I'm dealing with. As they say, it's lonely at the top. So when you have some of these senior executives show up, you definitely are involved in the conversations, at least over here, people really trying to help one another out.
Yeah, I think, by the way, when we were having our peer group meetings and some of our other meetings earlier this year, one of the sort of mottos that came up, and people chuckle at it and then begin to repeat it, which means, hey, maybe there's a grain of truth to it. And that is, lenders were focused on surviving till 25 or survive till 25, which is basically, we all acknowledged it was tough the second half of 2022, 23, half a year of 2024. Well, guess what came up last week when we were doing our peer group meetings? And that was we came up with thrive in 25. So what a difference a few months make.
Wow.
That we just have changed just 2 letters. And we've got a little bit of a messaging around the fact that lenders feel at least we've hit probably the peak of interest rates and are beginning to see, and obviously the Fed's cut of a half a point just a couple of weeks ago has signaled maybe rates won't come down as fast as we would like, or maybe as much as we would like. And the MBA's come up with a new forecast just last week as well. But it sure does not appear that it's probably going up. So, suddenly at least people are thinking, my goal now is to thrive in 25, which is better than saying I'm trying to survive in 25.
I agree. A little more
good news.
A little more positive spin. And Garth, I know at the peer group sessions, they're obviously very, closed door. So without, giving anything away that you shouldn't, what are some of the things that you were hearing people talk about? I mean, I know there's a, really interesting analysis of, really looking through numbers and so forth. And I think one of the great things we've seen is we're actually have a return to profitability, not much, but at least a return to profitability. But what else what else are you hearing from people?
Well, I think there certainly is an element of, to steal another phrase, Elton John, I'm still standing. So, maybe that's our walk-up music now. So for those, by the way, for the use 1980 people, just think of the visual of that video, big glasses, he in a car, roof down. Woo, it's inspiring. So
I love it.
I think there is a positive element to the fact that obviously the market is getting better. I think what was very interesting is people were beginning in the meetings, and we're only halfway through, by the way, for the season. We have the large independents next week. But they're beginning to talk about how they are going to staff up. Whoa, they hadn't been talking about that for a while. And they're trying to be cautionary about how they're going to staff up. And the third element was maybe the ROI for our technology investments is going to begin to bear fruit. Because the tricky part in the technology space is we have been cutting staff so fast and cutting expenses that you're investing in these technologies to pick up efficiency, but it's hard to say exactly what the efficiencies are unless you can tie it to the reduction in cost or the increase in volume. So I would say, though, that is the element there is how do we ramp up, to address the refinance or to address the pickup in affordability and in some markets, purchase market, how do we ramp up without making the mistakes of the past, which is hiring too many humans and then ending up having to go through the cycle again at some point and letting those humans go.
You're bringing up some really good points that I'll piggyback on talking a little bit about the technology, just having come back not too long ago from Digital Mortgage, held in San Diego this year. And it was actually a great turnout. They had a great turnout. By the nature of the conference, certainly there were a lot of technology providers there, but there were incredible executive decision makers and lenders there as well. But that was exactly the topic that had a lot of focus, both by the technology providers as well as by the lenders, is really honing in on the ROI. And it's certainly something, that we talk to people a lot in our practice at STRATMOR. But really, for example, encouraging the vendors, and I would encourage any of the vendors listening, if you are coming up on, any of the demos, if you're coming to MBA Annual and going to do your session in the hub, the couple of key guidances that I would give you is, and I certainly heard it loud and clear, people taking this to heart at Digital Mortgage, is number one, be real clear about the problem that you solve. Don't assume, we all listen to our own stories so many times that sometimes we forget to be very clear about exactly the problem that you solve today for lenders. And then absolutely talk about the real ROI. And if you need to talk about that amongst yourselves behind the scenes and make sure that you really understand it yourselves, it's very hard in mortgage because when you do have the interest rates going up and down, causing production to fluctuate, it can be very tricky to hone in on a real ROI. But those are the important conversations, to Garth's point, that people are having right now, saying, really, what expense are you going to cut? Really, what technology am I going to be able to perhaps replace by bringing this on board? Really, what new revenues are you going to drive? And how would I know that it's true? What success stories or data points could you give me to share that that's true? So just a note, for the technology providers listening. Brett, anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's more of an observation over the last couple of years. I just checked the attendee list to see who's here in real time, and it's a who's who of names on here. And a lot of these folks have been in the industry for over 20 years. And so I think back that, pre-2008, 2008, post-2008, everything that happened there. And then the big pickup in business in 2011, 2012, I think it was May, June of 2013, it started to dip again. People had to lay people off. We saw a tough 2018 and, obviously 19 through, 21, early 22 were pretty good. And what I've noticed this time around is there hasn't been a panic. There hasn't been, oh gosh, what are we going to do? Because if you watch the treasury, right, if you watch the yield, it was the higher and fire, higher and fire. You just kind of watch people go that. Now is, well, wait a second. We know it's going to be tough for probably a couple years. Let's invest in our tech. Let's learn from the last 20 years. So when this market does turn and we're, as Garth said, I'm still standing, right? When we are still left, let's make sure that we've taken the lessons from the past, build our tech properly so it does scale when the market comes back and there's not this panic of, I got to go hire a bunch of underwriters, big bonuses coming out. I got to hire teams of loan officers, big bonuses coming out. It seems to be, kind of like watching a really good football team. They are just, they're calm, cool, 2 minutes to go. And I didn't see people really stressing out as much, the ones who are thinking about, we're going to invest in tech and we're really going to plan for the future. So that's what I've noticed difference about this cycle, Garth. I'm not sure if you've noticed that as well. There's certainly been stress. I don't want to downplay that, but it just seemed that people said, yeah, this is going to be tough, but I'm thinking 5-10 years out still.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think back to my Elton John, I'm still standing. So those that are surviving, and I've written a couple articles about this recently, I don't think, by the way, this interest rate improvement's going to help everybody the same. I think, in fact, our last advisory angle, we talked about this too. So go to the YouTube channel and click on the other one if you didn't see it. But I think it's going to certainly help the market overall, but it's going to not help all lenders equally. And so, how are you going to ride this transition as interest rates go down, and how to position yourself for the future? The one thing I think, though, that I would stress, whether it's a conference or roundtable or workshop or just the old-fashioned getting out to see your clients. So what is the difference around a face-to-face interaction than a web? And the web, it's going to be more efficient. It's cheaper. You can do more of them. You can do back-to-back 8. Hell, I got a webinar I'm doing as soon as I get off this one. So you can record it. You can transcribe it. So there's a lot of advantages to that. And all of us are sliding into that, becoming the norm. We do multiple of these a day, when just a few years ago, we didn't do any or hardly any. So what is it? Well, I would say there's a few things. Number one is attention. So if you are face-to-face, can gauge the actual attention you are getting from the individual you're trying to talk to. Are you look them in the eye? Are they looking you in the eye? Are they engaged in it? Are they reacting facial clues to what you are saying? They can't multitask, right? I mean, that'd be pretty rude to try to multitask when you're sitting across the table from someone, or if you're sitting face to face in a room. But so one is attention, but it also means you've got to pay attention too. You got to say, what visual clues am I getting? How is the audience reacting if it's a public speaking? How is the person coming by the booth reacting to my story? The second, so that's one is attention. The second one, and Sue, give me permission, I'm going to do 3 of them. The second one is affection. And I do not mean that in a creepy way. So I'm not trying to create a creepy illusion, but it is the moment when you see people you've worked with for decades, you have some level of affection for them as people. You might remember their kids. You might remember you worked together. Some cases you shake their hand. That's a sign of affection. Other cases you hug it out, if that's still allowed these days. So there is an affection part of it that creates a positive vibe. And people do like to do business with people they like. But boy, it's tricky to demonstrate affection across a webinar. Although I like all you people who've attended. Thank you very much.
Okay, that got creepy just for a
To
minute there.
that part,
So
okay,
good.
got it. And then the third is empathy. And if you're paying attention and having real meaningful dialogue and are showing that, you care about them as people, their problems are ones you can react to empathetically. I understand how you feel. I understand why that's difficult. The underwriting cost per unit is too high. The difficulty of recruiting new staff, I hear that from my other clients all the time. Technology implementations are tricky, and boy, getting people to adopt the technology, I understand that. And here's what we have found. So now you have the chance to tell a story to them that is about what you do in the industry, or in some cases, it may be two people who they're not trying to sell each other anything at all. It's one company and another who are both independent mortgage bankers, let's say, who are comparing notes. How do you tackle this problem? So I think the only thing I would stress is trying to lean in to the opportunity for that physicality to come through, which to me is around this attention, affection, and empathy. And the reason I bring it up is often we will see people at conferences who are also on conference calls. And I fall victim to this. A conference call schedule, I should have rescheduled it. I should have not done it. And they're juggling. They're taking calls. They're sitting in the corner. They're running to their room because they didn't clear their schedule. So it's a missed opportunity to go all in on the opportunity to be face to face and be engaged with people.
I could not agree more. I think you made some great points there with even a little bit of alliteration, which I appreciated there. The
exactly. I always
attention.
try to. It's part of the storytelling.
Yeah, no, it worked. So attention, affection, and empathy. The other thing that I would say, it's interesting. One of the observations I've made at conferences is, I guess it goes to the attention point. And what I would say is that, again, if you're sitting in a demo session, or you've got people that are up on stage, understand whether they're speaking, whether they're demoing. It's hard. It's hard to stand up there on that stage. And to your point, Garth, I do feel like the multitasking has ramped up even when we're live, right? And if I know sometimes you like,
I don't understand why you would say that.
Yeah, I know, right? I can see God knows what's happening, but it's true, and it's bleeding over into when we're live together. And I like that you said, Garth, don't miss the opportunity, but also, showing some respect for the person who is on the stage, because I do literally see people. I mean, when I'm on a stage, if I ever see somebody and they're on their phone, I have to tell myself they're taking notes, they're texting their friends about what a great session this is, right? They're not multitasking, I'm sure, but just understand, as Garth said, if you're investing the money and the time and the effort and the time away from your family and your business to be at a conference, be there and connect and stay connected, and try to keep, just know that the folks on stage, they've invested a lot of themselves to be there. And so just pay attention, because you can learn so much more when you're actually, listening. And the other thing I would say is that, when you're going around and even talking with some of the technology providers, I know sometimes lenders are like, oh, I feel like I'm walking through a gauntlet. Everybody wants to sell me something. But just remember, again, they've invested a lot to be there, and sometimes have those conversations just for your own knowledge of understanding of what's even happening in the market. Give the courtesy of stopping and chatting for a moment or two to find out what the heck this company does, and think about, a lot of times I'll challenge myself to be like, who do I know that might be interested? This might not be a fit for me, but do I know somebody? If I had to say what one of my superpowers is, I think it's connecting people. And it's a great joy of mine. I love connecting people who I feel like need to know each other, or need to, find out about what each other does. And so even sometimes go into those situations and think about, if it's not for you, is there somebody else you could connect them to? Because those interactions that you have go a long way in this industry towards building relationship. Brett?
Absolutely.
So I think that that's an excellent point you bring up. Is, one of the aspects of the nature of our work that I like so much is that we get to see on the banking side how many different companies do essentially the same thing, but differently, right? And then on the tech side, we work with a lot of tech companies, either through direct engagements, or if we're doing some analysis for an economic buyer who's looking at buying the tech. You just get to learn a lot about what people are doing and how they go with the jobs. And what I like about these conferences is the number of times you can say, someone explains to you a challenge they're working on or an idea they have, and how many times you're able to say, you know who you should talk to. And you look around the room and say, here, come here, they're right there. And you go introduce them to somebody else. I've met so many intelligent people who are doing interesting things at these conferences. It's almost everyone I go to, there's somebody who knows somebody that I'm glad we met, or I was happy to introduce to people, because it's interesting how it can take off from there. You see them a year or two later and they become fast friends, and they've gone out and built something very interesting together.
Yeah. So I think the other thing I would say, Sue, is what you were thinking about, what you just said about the people reacting to you if you're speaking. And I do a fair amount of public speaking. I always find in the audience my empathetic listener, because they're out there. And it doesn't take me long looking as I'm speaking to see who they are. They're the ones that smile, they raise their eyebrows, they nod. That's the person they are. They're an empathetic listener. So I usually try to find them, and those are the people I keep looking at, because I know I'm going to get some visceral reaction, not the person looking down or the person looking straight ahead, or the person who's just a little more stoic and processing the information. It doesn't make them right or wrong. It's a device for me to get an empathetic response from an audience member. The second thing I do is, as soon as it's finished, I try to go talk to that person and thank them. And usually they say, I'm a what? And I said, you're an empathetic listener. And I appreciated it, because I always try to spot them in the crowd and make eye contact with them. And they usually say, oh, yeah. And then they'll tell you why they found interesting. And it's not that they necessarily were more interested in anybody else. They just show it. So sometimes that's the positive feedback that you can get if you're kind of trying to work a room. And the same thing, by the way, occurs if you have 5 people sitting around a table. It's that one that reacts that you often will start looking at, because they're giving you something to work with.
So true. It's so true. I remember before I did my first big speaking engagement, somebody said, don't worry, with the lights, you can't really see everybody. You can see everybody. So to Garth's point, you can see if somebody's sitting there, scowling, if that's just the kind of face they have, but you absolutely see those people. So just know, if you're one of those people like Garth mentioned, where you're
we appreciate it, even if we don't
nodder,
chase you down afterwards.
Right on. Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about what's coming up. The next big conference I'm going to be at is MBA Annual. Garth, I know you're going to be there as well. What are you looking forward to?
In Denver, yeah. So once again, for us, it's a lot of it is having quick meetings, because it's hard to have them that are too long. Try not to have them within a tight geographic area, so we're not running all over town trying to make these meetings. And once again, it's often, you're not going to probably close a deal unless you block a 60 to 90-minute meeting and you've already pre-sold it. But you're going to have a chance to show attention and affection and empathy for people, and usually hear something that you can perhaps help them with down the line. So we are not a booth company, STRATMOR. We are a meeting company, so that's our approach. But for other companies, other approaches can work too. We're just much more in the trying to set up meetings in advance model. That's the annual in Denver. We also are having a consumer direct workshop that we are conducting in November. If anybody watching this video is in consumer direct and are interested in attending, reach out to us. And that's usually, those are very content rich, because it's lenders who are all in the identical channel who are in the room sharing insights and data. So that's in November in Dallas. I'm speaking at 2 conferences next week, which are solution provider conferences. So I think that's it. Between now and November, maybe I'm forgetting somebody, but there may be another one coming along. Oh, and I have another peer. I already mentioned another peer group next week. So I only have 5 between now and the first week of November.
Very good. Well, if folks are planning to be at MBA annual, you can certainly pop that in the chat and kind of see who of your colleagues out there listening to this call are planning on being there. And yeah, I agree, Garth. I think, the kind of whether you're a lender or a vendor, and I think there's probably many people listening who have been both, like some of us have as well.
Mhm.
I think the way to maximize the conferences is really it's what you're doing before as much and after as much as it is at the conference itself. I know right now, we're still, 3.5 weeks out, something like that. And I would say my calendar's already pretty full because I've tried to go ahead and get all those meetings booked because people are moving really fast. And to Garth's point, whichever side of the horn that you're on, just being really thoughtful about, kind of the time that you're booking. I always pay attention to what are the other things that are going on, because you don't want to be
Yeah.
smack right in the middle of, who is the concert this year? Is it
Gloria
Gloria
Estefan.
Estefan? There you go. Okay. So you don't want to be in the middle of concert MBA. If you're going to go to dinner, really think ahead of time about your reservations, things like that. A couple other kind of big tips that I've shared with people is that I think, can be, I'm going to share some of my secrets actually, but here you go. One of the things that I've always done is if there's somebody that I really want to meet, whether it's a technology provider, executive, or it's a lender, and they're on a stage somewhere, it is such a great opportunity. Go in their session. Be that empathetic listener that Garth talked about. One of the things that I will commonly do is I will take pictures of the person on stage and then send them, if I don't have their number, I'll send them via LinkedIn Messenger. And kind of make sure that they get pictures of themselves on stage. It's very common when you're a speaker, you kind of like, well, want to be able to post something of yourself on stage, but you usually don't have any pictures of yourself. And so it's actually a great gift to give someone is snap a couple pictures of them, send them to them. Hey, great session. Post those pictures yourself and say, hey, I just heard this great session. Here's the people that were in it, tag them. Here's the takeaways that I got. I think anytime we do that, I mean, not only do you, kind of gain, I think, the ability to hopefully get at least an introduction to that person, maybe following that session. But they really appreciate it. And also the folks who weren't able to attend, like really seeing and hearing what's going on at these conferences and sharing your insights out there. It just kind of lifts all of us when we are, try to find those moments to be, get some of those social media posts out there. I generally have to try to do a whole batch of them like in the morning or something like that. But just, I think it's a way that we can share our insights with the rest of the community who may not be able to go live.
Yeah. If anybody is watching this video and does not on Sue's LinkedIn, you need to be. So remember I said we're not supposed to be multitasking. I'm not multitasking. I'm about to post Sue's profile in the chat because
Thank
for
you.
God's sakes, watch Sue because she is an absolute amazing. It doesn't come across as fakey and templates. It comes across as real and genuine. There is the attention, affection, and empathy thing illustrated every time. The posts you do are like only a few sentences, so you never read them and they're sitting there saying, that it was probably crafted months in advance or anything like that. It's just what you feel, what you saw, what you think with an image at that moment. So, make sure to
Thank you.
follow Sue Woodard. No problem.
No, thank you. And yes, Scott, just to explain, because Scott Payne, our friend and brother, put shower posts too.
That might need some context.
I'll give you a little context on that. I occasionally post professional PSAs,
Yes.
public service announcements about all of the fun things we experience while traveling. And there was, I'm not going to tell you what it was, but there was an unusual one of my shower at one of the last things I was speaking at. So you can go check that out. But certainly we'd be thrilled for you to follow all of us on LinkedIn as well as the STRATMOR group. So,
And
but
by
thanks
the
for
way,
that.
at the last conference I was at, it was at the Intercontinental Hotel in Chicago. And I changed my opening story. And the reason is because at that hotel, my daughter gave George Bush lice. And since you didn't attend the conference, you don't know the story. So that's just a tease for any of you'd like me to speak at your various conferences or events. And I will tell you the story of how my daughter gave George Bush lice.
Okay, there's
And
so much there, so much there. So,
exactly.
I'm just thinking about all the companies thinking about who are the speakers, the big names we can bring in, right? Sports stars, and they're going to talk about their, playing days and what they learned, or, maybe somebody in government, and somebody's going to say, we should go get that Garth Graham guy, have him tell the lice story.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I have a canoe pillow. I have a lice story. I've got so many. So, and they all are apropos stories that apply to our modern day mortgage world. So, that's just a tease.
Of all the things we had going on today, I didn't have Garth discussing lice on my bingo card for this podcast, but no, hey, and but there's always a good football story with Garth. One of the other just kind of tips I'll share, and then we'll transition a little bit into just some other kind of things coming up, headlines, hot topics, etc. Is when you are, I think probably one of the best changes I ever made in my own conference game is that way before I ever go to the conference, I book my debrief time with my team well in advance of the conference, both for myself to collect my notes, my business card, all the things, and kind of pull it together for myself and figure out what my follow-ups are. But I think if you put something on your calendar with your team, and this doesn't matter if you're a lender or if you're a technology provider, but you schedule a good block with the team of people that went out there and or the team of people who are interested in what the results were. What I found is that gives massive accountability to all the folks that are at the conference when they know they're going to be sitting there with their colleagues and with, leaders of the company and actually share, here's what I learned, here's who I talked to, here's my next steps. You're really paying a lot more attention in a different way during the conference if you're getting ready to report out to everybody, the other folks at your team. And again, I advise booking that way in advance because you get back, you're super busy, you can't find a 60 to 90 minute block on the calendar, and you can't have it 2 to 3 weeks later because you forget the color. And so highly, highly, highly encourage everybody listening, any conference that you're going to, book that time in advance. So I see David is singing the fight song. I think the Michigan fight song we got going here, Garth.
Go Blue. Thank you.
A lot going on there. So, oh my, okay. Yeah, it's deep Michigan over here. But Garth, things are turning, as you mentioned at the outset of the call. One of the wild cards, of course, that we have coming up is the election. And we're not going to get political at all on the call, but do you have any, I've heard from people that there's a little bit of kind of wonderment if people are sitting on the sidelines a little bit right now, buying or selling, because there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding the election. I'd love to hear both your takes on that.
Well, obviously in every election, presidential election that comes up, there is 3 bodies of our government that the elections are happening at the same time, and that is the Congress, the Senate, and the president. It is highly unlikely that all 3 will be run by any one party. So it's highly unlikely that the Dems will sweep the 2 and the presidency, or that the Republicans will sweep it either. So I don't want to get into my prediction about who will win what, but we're going to have a divided government. So it is hard to imagine that there'll be dramatic changes that can only really typically be accomplished when there is a unified single party in charge. That would be my one. So I don't feel the outcome is going to be catastrophic for our industry in one way or another. And I think generally whatever might occur is not likely to dramatically be overcome by the downward trend in interest rates that is likely to occur. So at least, through this Thrive in 2025 moniker, I can't even begin to speculate, out to 2027 and 2028. The next time we'll head into an election cycle. So I think that's the one piece that I will comment on. And obviously we hope to get through it with, some level of grace and peace and nonviolence, which is, probably important to say. But, we'll all know when we head into November. In fact, you're right. All my conferences are between now and the election day. So, and I'll sit back and watch the election day, and maybe we'll do another podcast at that time.
Brett?
I mean, look, I think life goes on no matter what, right? People move for a job, they get married, they get divorced, maybe because of their politics. um, they move for a job, they're going to upsize, downsize. People are going to retire. There's 33 trillion, I think, almost in home equity in the U.S. So people are thinking about, do I want to renovate my home? Is this my forever home I'm going to live in? And so life goes on, right? What policies are of each party putting forward, that might be material to someone, especially for first-time home buyers. Policies around the 4 to 5 million affordable housing units that we need. So I think it's important that people, one, understand what the policies are being laid out. Two, are they realistic? But I don't know. So I just, like I said, life just goes on, and so no matter who's in which political position, how does that impact your life directly? People continue to move on with their lives, and they'll always buy and sell homes, and people need a place to live. So,
and hopefully, when we get together, we'll still have an opportunity to have affection, non-creepy, and empathy for each other. So, I look forward to seeing everybody at the various conferences for sure.
Yeah, hopefully a bunch of folks are planning on coming out to the MBA annual. We're looking forward to it.
And then the IMB, the MBA IMB is January. That's right around. I've seen those notices will certainly be out there as well. I think that's likely to have a pretty big pickup because of the market improvement. I think, and that's one of those where typically it's one or two people from an IMB that might go, or no one, in a down market. So I think that one will probably be pretty well attended as well, because I think people will feel a little more bullish on how to thrive in 2025 and may want to talk about it.
Where is that one going to be? I don't remember the city.
I don't
remember
either.
Okay, well, you
I'm
multitask.
I'm trying to get through November. I think is it Denver also?
Austin, Texas, maybe. Yeah, Maria
Austin.
actually confirmed Austin, Texas. I actually think we're gonna have pretty good turnout for the IMB, but I think you just said something important too. Sometimes when you look at the numbers of people, if you look at the list and you're trying to make your decision on if you're gonna go or not, part of the things that we're seeing, one of the trends is that people aren't necessarily having 10 to 15 people from their company go. Sometimes people are saying, hey, we've had to make some tough cuts, so maybe we're gonna have 2 or 3 people go. But I've sure found, I certainly found a digital mortgage. I was very impressed with the turnout that was there. There were some, great lenders that were there, really top executives, but they didn't have an entourage of 15 people from their company. So again, my experience has been both, and primarily on the vendor side for the last 15, 20 years. It's also where deals, this is where relationships are made, where you make those connections, where you're able to, learn. And it's just, as I said, I've seen it be the kind of the game changer for a lot of businesses.
And what the heck, we're going to be at ICE Experience. We're doing 2 sessions. Brett and Sue and I are facilitating 2 sessions. So you can come, show up in person, and be our empathetic listeners. And that's in Vegas in March, I guess.
Yeah.
So what the heck, my calendar is filling up even more than I thought.
I know. Well, you know what? It's all good stuff. And again, we're seeing numbers improving. The latest MBA numbers actually had the refinance index up 20% from the prior week, but up 175% higher than this same week a year ago, which I thought was pretty interesting. Also, Marina, I'm the president of her fan club, by the way, Marina Walsh. Love when she talks a lot about the PAPI, the purchase affordability index, and actually affordability is improving slightly too. That's a big issue for everybody. And I'm not saying it's great, but at least it's been trending in the right direction, right? So there's, there's some good numbers out there. And I think, Brett, you were talking about this earlier. Maybe we'll just chat about this for a minute before we wrap up our call. There does tend to be a better feel of optimism out there. I know you work with a lot of lenders on a regular basis and technology providers. Brett, talk a little bit about just kind of what are you hearing from them? What's the conversations like? What are they looking forward to?
Yeah, we talked to a client about a week and a half ago, and they said that they've almost tripled the number of applications. A large company, they've almost tripled the number of applications coming in. I think it's getting back to, not just the energy at the top and seeing the opportunity coming through, but making sure that you are taking care of that opportunity when it actually comes in the door, not just looking for the layups. I'll give you a kind of a personal story. I've seen a couple come through the chat that Scott Payne's on. I call him the OG of secret shopping. I'm literally in the middle of a secret shop right now, and I inquired at 11:15 this morning, and I've still not heard back. I tried electronically getting a hold of the company. I called in. I told them I wanted to call back, and I haven't heard anything. So I want to be able to make sure we take the enthusiasm with the market turning, and also making sure that we are actually taking care of the opportunity that comes in the door, because we see a lot slip through. As I said, Scott's the resident expert. I've learned a lot from him on this topic, but he sees it every week. He's got some really good posts on LinkedIn about his personal experiences. So as the energy is there, I think it's really important not to lose that energy as it's coming through, because consumers are excited too. Hey, I can move, I can refinance, I can do something. Making sure we're actually following up with them and giving them a really good experience. Anybody can get a loan from anywhere, but what really is different about your company, and why should I do business with you? And it's not like a sell me this pencil type of thing, but how do you wow somebody?
Absolutely.
I'm actually thinking of conferences. I'm going to be speaking at the Lending Tree conference coming up right after the election. Actually, it's going to be the next week.
Yep.
And actually sharing some of those. I know both of you have spoken there as well. But I'll be actually sharing some secret shopping insights, both of my own, as well as some of the things, Brett, that you and Scott have discovered, because it is a little shocking. You hear people complaining about, interest rates, affordability, inventory, but they're not returning phone calls, right? So,
yeah. And I just saw Scott's post this today. It's not about, aha, I got you. We don't do secret shopping to call people out and say, look, you did a bad thing, like, calling somebody on the carpet. Say, hey, here's a great opportunity to improve, right? So what have we learned from the past, right? We noticed that, loan officers were, hey, go apply online. Here's my link. And because the rates were so low, you're handing out water in the desert. Now you got to talk to people, get to know them, show some empathy. As Garth said, he has a great phrase, be human. The number of times that people say we shop, hey, why are you buying a home? What's going on in your life? I think that's happened. Maybe I can think of twice this year, since we've been doing all the shops, one of which was on Friday. So it says, as the enthusiasm builds, just make sure that you're keeping an eye on all this work you've spent and all these vendors you work with and all the reasons you go to this conference. Is your work generating dividends?
Well, I'll share a personal story myself, and then I'll turn it over to Garth to see if he's got any closing comments for us. And this is actually something, this is inside baseball, because this is something I haven't even shared broadly with a lot of my friends yet. I am actually selling my house. I am actually doing new construction on another property. And of course, getting a mortgage in there. So it's a very different thing. It's a very interesting thing that I've observed myself over time when over the years I've been in the mortgage industry, 30 some. It's very different when we're talking about it kind of theoretically versus going through it yourself, right? And it's having that reminder, what Brett just said. It serves as a reminder of, it's a very human time in your life. There's a life event happening, whether somebody is asking you about it or not. And it is a time that people feel kind of vulnerable and exposed, it's nerve wracking. Where's my cat gonna, are they gonna get through the stress? Okay. How is this all gonna work? Did you get the thing that I sent you? Why haven't I heard back on the thing yet? I mean, even me, that I've been through this lots of times. I've done, I don't know how many thousands of transactions for other people during my career. It's totally different when you're going through it yourself. And so just remember, every single human, I remember, Bill Dallas used to make a comment, and Garth, you've said the same thing too, that it's about how many humans how many families have you helped? It's not, people talk about their production numbers, how many units.
2 billion, 3 billion. Yeah.
Yes.
3,000.
But those are people. It's
6,
people
000,
and
9,000 people I've helped. Yeah.
People's stories, right? So just again, I'm having very personal reminders of all of that right now. So I love, Brett, that you brought that up. Garth, any closing wisdom for us?
No, we
wrap
appreciate
things
it.
up?
We appreciate everybody choosing to attend today and also watching in the YouTube channel. And feel free to reach out for us. We will be at all the various conferences, and we'd be happy to connect face to face, and in a non-creepy, affectionate way.
Yeah, that boy, I hope you all caught that at the beginning of this call. That was not at all creepy, Garth, but I loved Well, loved having the time with you two today. Just really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to continuing our advisory angle each and every month. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, certainly would encourage, as Garth said, reach out to us on LinkedIn, reach out to us. And we'd love to connect at a conference or otherwise and share with you all the good stuff happening at STRATMOR. And
Thank
thanks
you.
to the Chrisman commentary again. And to all of you, have a great day. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.